So, good morning. Now, we will discuss about in monetary standard. So, international monetary system we will discuss. The last part of this session on a monetary system or monetary standard is the paper currency standard, because as I mentioned in our earlier lecture, after the gold standard many countries adopted the monetary paper currency standard. Paper currency standard was neither linked to any gold or any metallic standard. However, however, there since there is no link to any kind of monetary value or monetary standard, it was very difficult on the part of the different country to convert the monetary standard exchange rate between inconvertible paper currency standard. And in this process, different theories have been developed to articulate the exchange rate between inconvertible paper currency standard. One of such theory is the purchasing power parity theory. The purchasing power parity theory developed during the Second World War, when many countries adopted inconvertible paper currency standard. There are two related versions of monetary purchasing power parity theory. One version is called absolute purchasing power parity, another version is called relative purchasing power parity. While understanding the purchasing power, we should understand that the basic requirement of purchasing power parity is the purchasing power of currency. Purchasing power of currency depends upon the many things. One of the primary thing is that what is called the inflation. A particular country have goods and services is more demanded, or a less demand depends upon the price of the goods and services. Price of the goods and services depends upon the manufacturing cost, production cost, manufacturing cost, that wages, taxes, inflation, many other things. All these things linked, all these requirements linked to what is called a purchasing power of a currency. Suppose purchasing power depends upon not only the wages, salary or the manufacturing cost, but also the taxation and inflation of the country. In this context, we will discuss about the purchasing power and also discuss why the requirement of purchasing power is essential under the inconvertible paper currency standard. As I mentioned in my lecture, that with the breakdown of the gold standard, free movement of gold ceased. Many countries introduced what is called paper currency. The breakdown, since that there is no transportation of gold from free transportation of gold from one country to another country, the basic requirement of the which was the basic requirement of the gold standard, this gold standard could not continue, and slowly and many countries removed the gold standard, linking the gold to the relative their paper currency or the any other metallic standard, and introduced what is called the paper currency standard. The paper currency standard depends upon how much currency they are circulating in the economy, what is the inflation, what is the price of the good in that particular country, and on that basis the exchange of goods take place. When a country exports something to another country, they receive some kind of international payment. That international payment itself in paper currency standard. So, the conversion of one currency to another currency was very difficult when different countries were different monetary standard, and there was no interlinking between one currency to another currency. So, world required that time what is called a conversion rate for different currency. In this context, the purchasing power parity theory was developed. So, the mean per exchange rate lost its significance, because gold, the primary requirement of free flow of gold was abandoned. There was complete confusion and currency conversion was in problem, which affect the international trade. Since international trade depends upon the exchange rate or the conversion of one currency to another currency, since there was no conversion, the currency conversion was itself in a problem. So, monetary monetary system or international trade was affected. To solve the problem of determination of equilibrium of exchange rate between two unconvertible currency standard, the theory of purchasing power parity was developed. The basic requirement of purchasing power parity theory, the power of currency. The power of currency depends upon what? The purchasing, that demand on how much what is the power of the currency, how much in real goods the currency can demand. So, on that basis the purchasing power parity developed. The purchasing power parity basic requirement I have to mention here, that basic idea underlying the purchasing power parity theory is that foreign currency are demanded by the national of a country because it has power to command goods in its own country. Why people demand currency? Because with the currency they will purchase goods and services, and how much goods and services they purchase from one unit of currency, that is the power of the currency. If they are purchasing more goods with the one unit of currency, then power of currency is more. So, when you exchange currency of US dollar or the Indian rupee you are exchanging, end of that day what you are exchanging? You are exchanging the purchasing power of currency, because I am accepting US dollar because US dollar is demanded in the world, because US dollar has more purchasing power than Indian currency. Similarly, so when you exchange two currency, we are exchanging the purchasing power between the two currency. Thus, the primary factor determining the exchange rate is the relative purchasing power of the two currency. When two currencies are exchanged, what is exchanged is the purchasing power of the two currency. And in this, on that basis, underlying of this, the exchange rate under inconvertible paper currency standard determined. So, purchasing power parity, it is the parity of the purchasing power that determines the exchange rate. So, when one currency is exchanging another currency, we are exchanging the internal power of the currency. So, thus purchasing power parity theory states that purchasing rate tend to rest at a point at which there is equality between the respective purchasing power of the currency. When two currency equalizes, what you are equalizing? Their purchasing power. When US dollar, suppose one basket of goods in US cost $20 and same basket of goods in India costs $200 rupee, then $1 is 20 rupees. In that way you can determine the exchange rate. So, the PPT theory, because as I mentioned that purchasing power depends upon many things. One, not only the inflation, amount of money circulation in the economy, the inflation, the tax rate, wage rate, salary, many other internal requirements are there. So, all these things affect the purchasing power. However, when you exchange the two currency, all this what is called the basic requirements of the purchasing power, or the basic determinants of purchasing power already there in the currency itself. So, when you decide the PPT theory or the purchasing power parity theory has two different versions. One is called absolute version of purchasing power, another relative version of purchasing power parity. What actually absolute version, what is relative version, we will be discussing the same. The absolute version of purchasing power parity, as per the purchasing power parity theory, the exchange rate between US dollar and Indian rupee is a ratio of two price indices. As we in different country we have price indices. What is the price indices? In India we have what is called the price index. Price index depends upon the price of the good and multiply with the weight. The price index of US also there. When you one price index and another price index we compare their exchange rate. So, when you mention that a basket of goods, a representative collection of goods in India costs 9,625 rupees, and in US it is called $195. then the spot rate or the spot exchange rate between US dollar and Indian rupee in Indian rupee format, price index of India divided by price index of US. The spot rate nothing but price index of rupee and price index of US. So, here the price index of India is 9,625 rupees and price index of US is $195. So, if you divide 9625 by 195, we are getting $1 in terms of 1 US dollar in terms of rupee is 47.5128. What does it mean? It means that $1 in international market will have a price 47.5128 rupees. It means that there is an exchange rate between dollar and rupee, and the dollar and rupee exchange rate depends upon a basket of commodity. The basket of commodity, what is the price in India divided by what is the price in US, determine the exchange rate between India and US. It is called absolute because we are not linking any other things here. It depends upon only the price index. However, it may happen that in US, in India inflation is more, the price will be more. In US inflation is less, price is less. Generally in India we have inflation at present something around 9 to 10%, US at present around 3 to 4%. So, US dollar have more price, more purchasing power than Indian rupee. When inflation increases, the purchasing power of currency decline. So, then definitely the purchasing power is affected because of inflation. However, in absolute purchasing power parity theory, we are not considering all this relative concept. When you factor the relative concept, particularly the inflation, we have relative purchasing power parity. As in absolute purchasing power parity, we are only taking into account the price index of two countries. In place of US, suppose you are considering any other country, suppose you are considering pound sterling here. Then price index of India divided by price index of pound sterling will decide the exchange between India and pound sterling. Similarly, suppose you are taking euro, the price index of India divided by price index of euro will decide the price of the spot rate or the exchange rate between Indian rupee and euro. Here since we are not considering any kind of other parameter, this is called absolute price index or absolute exchange rate or absolute purchasing power parity theory. Now, suppose we are going to relative purchasing power parity theory. Relative purchasing power parity theory examine the relative exchanges in price level between two countries and maintain the exchange rate which will compensate for inflation differential between two countries. Here, what we are factoring here? Inflation. As I mentioned, inflation also affect the purchasing power parity of a currency. High inflation, the purchasing power of the currency decline. Low inflation, purchasing power increases. So, when you exchange between two currency, we also exchange the inflation between two currency. The high inflation country have less purchasing power and low inflation country have more purchasing power. Because of this, high inflation country have the currency exchange rate will be not favorable, however low inflation country the exchange rate is favorable to that country. The relationship of exchange rate between two countries can also be factored in place of the absolute purchasing power parity. Now, we have to go for beyond the absolute purchasing power parity theory and factor the inflation of the two countries. Now, suppose we know that spot rate will determine on the basis of spot rate means the absolute purchasing power parity. The absolute purchasing power parity we are discussing, we are taking into account the price index of two countries. absolute purchasing power parity ABC, absolute purchasing power parity APT theory. Here we are taking into account the spot price index. So, I mention here price index, spot rate or spot exchange rate between Indian rupee. I mention here Indian rupee is equal to price index in India divided by the price index of US. This will give us spot exchange rate between Indian rupee and US dollar. So, once you got the spot exchange rate, you have to convert this spot exchange rate into relative price theory, the APT theory. APT theory factor the inflation rate. So, here if you see the rate here expression is that ST is the spot exchange rate at time period T, H0 the spot exchange rate at initial time, that is starting time, initial spot exchange rate. These two are linked to what is called the 1 plus inflation rate y divided by 1 plus inflation rate of x, and these two to the power of t, time. T is the time here. It was H0 is the spot rate, spot exchange rate, and ST is the spot exchange rate at T is equal to at T, and here spot exchange rate at T is equal to 0, here spot exchange at T, and here I and Y. I mention here two concept here, I and IX, IY and IX. IX and IY is the expected annualized inflation rate of country Y, that is I and IY I mention here. This IY is inflation rate of country Y, and here expected inflation rate of country X, and T is the time period for us. Okay. In using the absolute exchange rate, you can convert into a relative exchange rate purchasing power parity theory. So, when X is expected inflation of country X, similarly Y is the expected inflation of country Y, and ST and H0 the exchange rate at spot time, where using the absolute purchasing power parity theory. Now, if you go beyond that, why? Because here we are considering, we are addressing the inflation, because I mentioned that inflation affect the purchasing power parity. So, I mentioned earlier also high inflation country have low purchasing power parity. Similarly, low inflation country have high purchasing power parity. You have to address the inflation in absolute. When you address this inflation in absolute purchasing power parity theory, we get the relative purchasing power parity. So, while discussing this, suppose we have an example here. The annual inflation rate is expected to be 8% in India, and that of US is 3%. The current exchange rate is 46.550 per dollar. One US dollar is 46.550 Indian rupee. What would be the expected spot rate? What the expected spot rate in 6 months from Indian rupee relative to US dollar? So, here we have given the annualized inflation in India and US, and also we have the spot exchange rate between Indian rupee and US dollar. One US dollar is 46.550 Indian rupee. Now, we have to estimate after 6 months what should be the exchange rate between Indian rupee and US dollar. So, if you use our formula, that is our spot rate H0 here US dollar 1 is equal to Indian rupee 46.550. So, we got H0. We have to estimate the what will be the ST when US inflation is 3% and India inflation 8% and time period for us 6 months. 6 months for us. So, we got our formula is, suppose if you remember our formula, that is ST by H0 is equal to 1 plus our formula 1 plus IY divided by 1 plus IX to the power T. Now, we have to estimate HT, or HT is equal to H0 into 1 plus IY divided by 1 plus IX to the power T. So, here H0 already you got how much 46.5500 into we got I plus here our inflation rate is Y, inflation rate is X. So, 6 months we got the inflation rate 1.08. So, 1.08 in case of India, that is 8% and 1.03 in case of US, that is 3% inflation, and if you multiply this you will get the exchange rate between India and US. So, what is that? I here 1 plus 8% divided by 1 plus 3% and our time period is half 6 months, that is half year 1 by 2, and you will get what is called the in place this if you solve we will get 47.6665. This is means after 6 months with the current rate of 46.550 and inflation between US and India, the differential inflation is 5%, that US and India inflation differential we call inflation differential between US and US dollar and India rupee, that is India 8%, US is 3%. So, inflation differential is 5%. The 5% inflation differential lead to increase of exchange rate between Indian rupee and foreign US dollar. Since India has a high inflation, the Indian currency need to be depreciated, and Indian currency when H0 is at the current spot it was 46.550, after 6 months it is 47.665. This is only because India have a high inflation compared to US and Indian currency is depreciated because of that reason, and since Indian high inflation lead to purchasing power decline, but decline in purchasing power, Indian goods and services will be less price will be more and there will be less demand, and because of that reason the Indian rupee depreciated further to 46.550. Now, realizing this purchasing power parity, as I mentioned here, there are many factors which affect the purchasing power parity. So, if you understand from the beginning that the purchasing power parity is a price index between two countries. The price index is here, price index depends upon the price of goods and services. Price and goods and services depends upon inputs, that is your supply materials input cost, it depends upon wages, salary, taxation, taxation, the tariff barriers, many other things along with the inflation. This lead to what is called change in the purchasing power, and purchasing power primarily affected because of inflation also. And on the basis of that, we have two different theory, what is called absolute purchasing power parity theory, who determine the spot rate, and when the input prices, particularly the inflation cost, inflation changes, we have relative purchasing power parity theory, where we factor that inflation rate differential between two countries. On the basis of purchasing power parity theory, since then the world currency system depends, because all currency at present is inconvertible paper currency standard, and under inconvertible paper currency standard since there is no underlying asset on the basis of which that purchasing power parity depends. So, very difficult to go for deciding the exchange rate, and on to solve this problem or to estimate the what is called the exchange rate between two country under inconvertible paper currency standard, the purchasing power parity theory developed, and purchasing power parity theory tried to address the issue of exchange rate on the basis of internal purchasing power of the currency, internal purchasing power or domestic purchasing power of the currency. However, there are many factors which affect the purchasing power parity theory. Primarily the inflation, taxes, quality of product, and other circumstances that change the market, and also bearing on the price of price of the goods or internal purchasing power. Here, when you decide the absolute purchasing power parity theory, we assume that a basket of commodity which in two different countries, their price determine the exchange rate. It may happen that the basket of commodity which we decide may not be of similar, what is called similar quality in different country. It may happen that the goods which is available in India, the quality may differ when you compare it in US also. Similarly, the taxes may also affect. US in India, the internal taxes, what is called the goods and services taxes, are very high. So, purchasing power of the currency is very less. It may happen India inflation is very high, the purchasing power is very less. It may happen the US quality of goods in India are not good as compared to US. So, that also affects the price of the good in US is very high because the quality is good. So, quality of goods, inflation, taxes also affect the purchasing power parity theory. However, inflation, taxes can be adjusted. It is very difficult to adjust the quality of product. So, while deciding the basket of commodity which should be comparable in across different country, that we have to design the goods and services in such a way. Because nowadays, if you see, all internationally tradable goods are considered for designing the purchasing power parity theory. Then international tradable goods generally have common quality. Similarly, suppose some goods are there which all across the world consume, and their quality almost remain similar. That kind of goods and services considered for the purchasing power parity theory. Another factor points is here, all these factors need to be adjusted while estimating the exchange rate under inconvertible paper currency standard. Some extent you can adjust the inflation, some extent you can adjust the taxes, some extent you can adjust the international what is called custom duty, other thing in deciding the purchasing power parity theory. However, it is very difficult to address the issue of quality of product. So, quality of product, same Colgate toothpaste in India cost very less as compared to same in US, because US the quality is different, in India it is different. Same Domino Plaza burger may cost in India different price as compared to cost in it is there in US, because the quality are different. Very difficult to decide the basket of commodity which should be tradable across the country, across world have same quality. So, it is not possible for to address this kind of issue of quality. Similarly, another concept is here PPT theory. The PPT theory is that PPT theory may not reflect the true exchange rate in the short run. However, in the long run, it indicates the fundamental equilibrium exchange rate. PPT theory, because short run the exchange rate is not affected because of taxes, quality of goods, quality of product or inflation. In the long run, short run there are many other factors which affect the exchange rate, and in the short run it is maybe because of expectation of the participant in the exchange rate market. It may be short term interest rate differential, short run inflation, so expectation of people that affect the exchange rate between two currency. However, in the long run this expectation may not be there. The true value of exchange rate because of the quality of true value of the exchange rate because of the purchasing power itself. Generally, we consider purchasing power parity for establishing what is called a fundamental equilibrium exchange rate in the long run. However, in the short run, we take into account the demand and supply of foreign currency. The demand for the US dollar in India is very high, so the Indian rupee will depreciate. Similarly, if India demand of euro is very high, so Indian rupee will depreciate against euro. However, in the long run, it is the fundamental internal purchasing power of the currency that determine the long run exchange rate. Generally, the purchasing power parity theory may not give us the true value of the exchange rate. However, it indicates what should be the exchange rate under inconvertible paper currency standard, because under inconvertible paper currency standard it is very difficult to establish the exchange rate. However, purchasing power parity theory indicates some extent what should be the exchange rate. People or the traders in the market generally consider the exchange rate between two currency on the basis of purchasing power parity to understand its fundamental values of currency. For the long run, in the short run, they consider the various other factors, particularly the inflation, taxes, interest rate, demand and supply, and also expectation of participant in the market, which affect the short run fluctuation in the exchange rate. It may happen that the long run exchange rate or the fundamental exchange rate gives some kind of indication, and however, the fundamental equilibrium exchange rate fluctuate in the short run because of this other parameter, which are primarily monetary, primarily monetary sector. Some extent may be the market which is what is called the monetary phenomenon. Some extent may be real sector phenomenon. Some extent may be the expectation of the participant in the foreign exchange market. So, while understanding the PPT theory, we can determine the exchange rate under inconvertible paper currency standard. Now, come to the references side. References here you can go through the international financial management side, Inuk and Resnick. You may also go through the multinational financial management by Madura. You can also go through the multinational financial management by Alan Shapiro. Berrington, Egan and Paul Rao Gracia, the international monetary system in the last and next 20 years, the economic policy volume 21 issue 47 inter-science publication. These are the some references are available, and there are many other things are available also. We can go through that. I have designed my slide on the basis of these references, and we can discuss some problems also. So, the model question is here: while describing the purchasing power parity theory, articulate the difficulty of assessing exchange rate in case of inconvertible paper currency standard. So, purchasing power parity theory we have to describe, and also what are the problems are there in inconvertible paper currency standard. First, to identify the problems in inconvertible paper currency standard. There are many problems under inconvertible paper currency standard. First is that since the paper currency circulate in different country without having any underlying asset, because there is no underlying asset like gold or any other currency, other metal on the basis of what the paper currency are printed and circulated. When different countries circulate different paper currency, it is very difficult to decide their exchange rate. Since the exchange rate can be decided if there is a common points, there is no common reference on which the paper currencies are of different countries are circulated. So, it is very difficult to assess the exchange rate under inconvertible paper currency standard. This issue can be solved or some extent can be addressed through the purchasing power parity theory. The purchasing power parity theory, the fundamentals of the purchasing power parity theory is that each currency has a purchasing power. Because currency has purchasing power, you demand the currency. When you demand the currency, or keep the currency with ourselves in banks or with our locker or with us only to purchase something, because we consider currency as an asset and there is a demand. On the basis of using the currency, you can demand in the market. So, the internal power of the currency, whether it is a paper or a gold, already there. When we exchange two currency, that is inconvertible paper currency, what we exchange? Nothing but the internal purchasing power. When we accept dollar, we are accepting the purchasing power of the dollar. Similarly, when we accept Indian rupee, we are accepting the purchasing power of Indian rupee. So, when two currencies are exchanged, nothing but we are exchanging the purchasing power of the two currency. So, under paper currency, in the inconvertible paper currency standard, the basic fundamentals values are there, that we are exchanging purchasing power rather than we are exchanging papers or currency. So, there are two versions of purchasing power as we discussed. One is absolute purchasing power theory. Here, absolute purchasing power theory, the purchasing power exchange takes place by dividing the price index of two countries. Each country has a price index. The price index indicates the purchasing power in the country, or the inflation or any other parameter in the country. When you divide the purchasing power price index of two countries, we come to a exchange or the ratio, we decide the ratio at which the currency can be exchanged. So, absolute purchasing power parity theory, the ratio between two purchasing power or the two price index decide the exchange rate. However, in absolute purchasing power parity theory, you neglect what is called the inflation, the interest rate, quality of goods, taxes, many other parameters which affect or will influence the purchasing power. In a relative purchasing power parity theory, you address the issue of inflation. The inflation differential is added another parameter in relative purchasing power parity theory, and we assume that higher inflation reduces the purchasing power, lower inflation increases the purchasing power. On the basis of that, we correct the absolute purchasing power parity or absolute purchasing power parity rate through the inflation differential. And in this process, we address the issue of inflation and we correct the absolute purchasing power parity theory because of inflation differential. However, it is very difficult to address the issue of taxes. It is very difficult to address the issue of what is called quality of goods, interest rate, which affect the purchasing power parity theory. Purchasing power parity theory, though provides some extent what is called some indicative rate of against which the inconvertible paper currency can be exchanged. However, the true value of exchange rate not only depends upon the purchasing power, but also many other factors. The long run, it is the purchasing power to decide the exchange rate. In the short run, it is the expectation of market participant, interest rate, short run interest rate differential, inflation differential, taxes, many other parameters which have influenced the exchange rate. However, purchasing power parity theory gives us some kind of indicative rate at which we can exchange the inconvertible paper currency. We have to discuss all these issues in the model question. Some multiple questions are there. Multiple questions here, one such question I mentioned here is the basic idea underlying the purchasing power parity theory is that foreign currencies are demanded by the national of a country because why the foreign currency are demanded by different country, different people. Here it has power to command goods in its own country. Second is that to keep the banks for interest rate, to use for speculative activity, to purchase other currency. Why you demand currency? To keep on the, there are four alternatives are there here. It has power to command goods in its own country, to keep in banks for interest rate, to use for speculative activity, to purchase other currency. Second multiple question is that when two currencies are exchanged, what is exchange actually? The internal purchasing power of the two countries, the nominal exchange rate, only the two currencies or value of gold. What do you exchange? Third question is here, relative purchasing power parity relates expected inflation rate to the change in exchange rate, the internal purchasing power of the two current countries, nominal exchange rate, value of gold with exchange rate. The answer is here, question A is answer is first one, that is the basic idea underlying the purchasing power parity theory is that the foreign currencies are demanded by the national of a country because it has power to command goods in its own country. Since as we discussed in the purchasing power parity, the purchasing power inconvertible paper currency standard, the purchasing power of country decided the exchange rate, and it is because the purchasing power, the currency have the power or command over goods and services. When country have the currency have power command over goods and services, we generally demand currency because of that reason. And second question, when two currencies are exchanged, what is exchange? Here also we exchange the internal purchasing power of two countries. Nominal exchange rate, only the two currency or value of good. So, here when two currencies are exchanged, what is exchange? The internal purchasing power of the two countries. Because as I mentioned in our discussion, I mentioned in purchasing power theory, we exchange the internal power of currency. Internal power of currency, the internal money or the monetary unit the country circulate, the paper, the currency the country circulate in the domestic economy, that actually we exchange. Because each currency or each country's money has own purchasing power, and that purchasing power we actually exchange. And in this context, when two currencies are exchanged, actually we are exchanging internal purchasing power of the two countries, because each country has a purchasing power, because each country has a circulation of money or domestic currency. The currency they circulate and people hold the currency because the currency has value. That value, internal value of the currency is the purchasing power. When the two currencies are exchanged, we are exchanging the purchasing power of the two currency. Third one, relative purchasing power parity relates the expected inflation rate to the change in exchange rate. Because when you discuss the relative purchasing power parity, what we address here, we correct the inflation differential between two countries, because when inflation differentials are there, it influence the spot rate or absolute purchasing power parity. In absolute purchasing power parity, the ratio of price index of the two country indicate the conversion rate between two country. The conversion rate is the two countries currency conversion. The two country currency conversion depends upon two country price index. The ratio of price index of two country decide the currency conversion of the two country, but the ratio of price index, the price index itself influenced by inflation. High inflation have low price index, low inflation have a high price index. So, the country which have more inflation, the price index is very high. The country which have low inflation, the price index is less. So, when you take the ratio of two price index, the country having high inflation, that the purchasing power will be low, and for that reason they have to surrender more internal money. The country having low inflation, the purchasing power is high, they have to surrender less amount of their own currency. So, when relative purchasing power parity relates the expected inflation rate to the change in exchange rate. The three multiple questions we have discussed, and also we discussed about the a model question on purchasing power parity theory. Before coming to end, I have to mention here what at present entire world, all countries in the world are inconvertible paper currency standard, and paper currency standard, the basic requirement of exchange rate under paper currency standard at present is the purchasing power parity. And for this reason, the purchasing power parity try to address the issues of inflation, they try to address the issue of custom duty, taxes, internal tax, external tax, and also the minute level of what is called the inflation side. So, all countries try to address the inflation to increase their own purchasing power of their own currency, and at present under inconvertible paper currency standard, the fundamental equilibrium exchange rate is the purchasing power parity. However, the fundamental equilibrium exchange rate depends upon many other factors, or we discuss about the inflation, interest rate, taxes, many other quality of goods and services, all these things, and fundamental equilibrium exchange rate or the purchasing power decide some kind of long run exchange rate. Within the short run, exchange rate fluctuate, and this fluctuation because of many other factors other than the short term interest rate and inflation. The expectation of people or market participant that also affect the short run exchange rate. In the next class, we will be discussing about the exchange rate determination, where we will address how the exchange rate between among country decides and what are the factors which affect the exchange rate, beyond that inflation, taxation and other thing. And that session will start our calculation process of exchange rate, what is called the arithmetic of exchange rate calculation. And also will discuss the various component of exchange rate, what is called spot exchange rate, foreign exchange rate, interbank exchange rate. We will discuss about exchange rate for exporter, importer, exchange rate for bills payment, exchange rate for interbank transaction side, and also we will be discussing about we will be using the purchasing power parity theory to determine the fundamental equilibrium exchange rate. Thank you.